open borders, shameful abandonment, disregard for human life, the prospect of more mandates and lockdowns, and the list goes on. Now more than ever, we need to stick together. Voting alone is not enough. We must use our dollars to support like-minded companies that fight for our rights and beliefs. Patriot Mobile is America's only Christian conservative wireless provider who shares your values. Last year, we gave more than $500,000 to conservative causes. With your support, we'll give more than $1.5 million this year. It's time to band together and support companies that truly love America and fight for our freedoms. Will you join us?
This is Kentucky's Voice Radio, covering the latest state and local issues with Tom Fallbush, Bob Scott, and Jim Waters.
Hello, Kentuckiana. You're listening to Kentucky's Voice on 970 AM. I'm your special host, Dr. Lance Pearson, with the Kentucky Liberty Caucus and the Louisville Tea Party. Thank you for joining us on our show today, which focuses on Kentucky politics, Louisville area politics. Occasionally, we'll have a national story or two that we will bring up. So today, we have a jam-packed show if we can get all of our guests to join us. We're going to hopefully have on State Representative Bill Wesley, who is running for State Senate. We will also have Jay Williams, who spells his first name G-E-X, but he's a state senator who will be running for re-election. And our last guest, hopefully, will be Kim Holloway, who is a state representative also running for re-election. The theme, if you didn't catch on from that list of guests, is we are transitioning into primary election season. So we will still talk a little bit about some bills if we have on a state representative or a state senator. And hopefully we'll mention a couple bills this time, but the primary elections are less than a month away. So the last day for primary voting is May the 19th. So like literally we're about 3 weeks away. We're going to have this program and 3 more on Mondays that I might be able to have. So I'm hoping to just jam that fill with content that relates to helping you make a informed decision about who you want to vote for in the likely Republican primaries. I don't know that we have a huge amount of Democrat primary listeners, but we will, discuss some of the candidates in those Democrat primaries as well. All right, let me go ahead and fill you in on your other options for viewing or listening to this program today. You are probably listening to us right now on WGTX, which is 970 AM in the Louisville area. We also are live streaming this right now on Kentucky's Voice on both Facebook and on YouTube. So if you want to go to Facebook.com or if you want to go to YouTube.com, search for Kentucky's Voice, and you will find some tabs there that basically allow you to click on it and see live video of the stream today. Those videos are then kind of broken up and then archived on YouTube, so you can see all of our past shows. I encourage you to do that, as we've had a lot of great content this year from all of our hosts. That includes Jim Water, Andrew Cooper Ryder, Tom Fallbush, Bob Scott. We also have several special guests that also from time to time will host. So Debbie Reynolds, I think. So be sure to check those out. We also will have a rebroadcast of this show that will be on TV. If you have Spectrum, on Spectrum, you want to go to channel 21. There will be a rebroadcast of this show today at 12:30, 4 p.m., and 8 p.m. All right, I think that covers most of it. Producer, could you give me the text number again? That's 502-571-0970. So if you want to text into that line, we will try to read over those. If it fits in with the content of the show, we'll try to maybe even incorporate a question or two that we get off of that text line. You can also text that text line. Just text GIVE, and a link will be provided to you that will allow you to give to our show. You can also go to our website, which is kyvoice.org. That's kyvoice.org. If you go there, there will be links to a lot of the things that I just mentioned, some of those websites, but there will also be a link that allows you to donate either on a monthly basis or a one-time gift. We are listener supported, and therefore every dollar counts. If you want to continue to have conservative talk and opinion, covering the news on state and local politics, especially in the Louisville area, if we're going to win this battle, both at the election box and for our future, we need to win in the marketplace of ideas, and that's what this show is dedicated to. So if you have some spare dollars, we would certainly appreciate it.
Now, back to Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
Okay, welcome back to Kentucky's Voice. I'm your special host, Dr. Lance Pearson with the Kentucky Liberty Caucus and the Louisville Tea Party. I want to cover a little bit of business. Let's see. Tonight, there is a fundraiser for Lonnie Joseph, who is a Metro Council member. I believe that is kind of in the Shively area. I think it's called Gateway Pizza. But if you want to go on Facebook and find Lonnie Joseph, he is running for Louisville Metro Council, and he is doing a fundraiser tonight. I'm sure he would appreciate you to stop in. So find that advertisement. You can find that on the Louisville Tea Party Facebook page. So I encourage you to join that. We tend to post, events that are happening in the Louisville area. Also, tomorrow, there is a candidate night as well as a free meal that is available at, I think it's called Glory and Light Church, but it's on National Turnpike, and that's being put on by the Kentucky Family Association. So I think the meal starts at about 5 p.m., I think it's Glory and Fire, actually. I'm sorry. So look that up. You can find also on the Louisville Tea Party, there will be a repost of that. I encourage you to check that out. And so those are two events that I encourage you to kind of start ramping up your involvement in the primaries and getting yourself informed. All right. The big news that's happening in the city, of course, is it is Derby week. So if you have not seen Derby, if you have not participated or gone to the Derby, honestly, locals are largely priced out at this point, to be honest with you. It's been probably a decade or two since I've actually visited the Derby. But nevertheless, we always watch it, and we have a big Derby party. I'm sure a lot of the people in our local area are going to be going to that. A couple of news stories that were related to this that just basically came out. The first is I heard a lot of rumors online that the Derby was being pushed back in time. I do not believe that is true. It's usually the actual Derby goes off on Saturday at about sometime between 6 and 7. It's scheduled to do the same this year. So I think people were getting confused in that it is the Oaks that is being pushed back in terms of start time. So the plan by Churchill Downs is to push the start of the Oaks race, which happens on Friday and is only fillies, female horses that are in that race. I believe those are 3-year-olds also, just like the Derby, but only fillies. That is being pushed back to 8:30 start time. The reason for that, and I think it's a potentially long-term a good idea, is there is going to be national TV broadcasting of the Oaks as well as the Derby this year. So Churchill Downs is expanding and in partnership with NBC is expanding their coverage. And so they didn't want to have a major race that was going to happen in the middle of the workday, especially on the West Coast. So they've pushed that back. Now, how does that impact local businesses? Probably not in a positive way. Instead of people going to the Oaks and then leaving and going out to local businesses, local restaurants, and maybe having dinner, they're probably all of the 100,000 people or so that are going to attend the Oaks this year. They likely will wind up staying in Churchill Downs for the whole day of racing. So my suggestion to Churchill Downs, if you want to consider it, is allow people to re-enter. Have some process for re-entry where people can attend some of the early races during the day for Oaks. They can get a stamp or maybe a wristband or something. They can go out to eat for dinner at local businesses to support Louisville and come back in for the main event. So I don't know if there's any plan for them to do that, but going forward, I hope they consider it because this is a showcase for Louisville, but we also want to promote other Louisville businesses as well. I have no problem with Churchill Downs making a lot of money on this. They need to. They're a vital part of our economy, but I hope that we can help our local businesses, especially small businesses, as well. Okay, if you've got any commentary on that, feel free to send us in some text. Now, we're going to try to play a video online, and we'll see if this works for our producer. We're basically right in the middle of political season. There's lots of what we call Lincoln Day dinners. It's local counties will have a meal and hear from various candidates. So I wanted to play a broadcast of something from the Owen County, not Oldham, Owen County Lincoln Day dinner that happened, I believe, on Friday. This may have been Friday. So let me see if we can broadcast this. This is basically the last coverage that I want to give to let Andy Barr basically make his case for why you should vote for him for Senate. We will try to cover similar things for Daniel Cameron and for Nate Morris in the coming weeks as we lead up to the election. But let me basically try to let you hear him making his pitch for why you should vote for him. All right. Okay. So I'm getting a message from my producer that we don't have any sound on that. Unfortunately, technical issues happen. So we'll try to maybe broadcast that later in the show if we can get those issues sorted out. Nevertheless, Andy Barr has recently changed his political messaging a little bit. I've been to several of these Lincoln Day dinners, and so this was kind of an updated version, I guess, for the home stretch. I thought he made a pretty convincing case. The first start of it, he had various quotations from Calvin Coolidge and Thomas Edison, but just talking about how he's a hard worker and he's persistent, which is fine. And then he talked about his three basic arguments of why he was the best candidate for that race. The first of those arguments that he made was that he has a track record of actively supporting the Trump agenda, whereas Nate Morris and Daniel Cameron have vocally supported it. He's actually been in Congress on the House side, not the Senate side, but on the House side, voting for various bills that the Trump administration has been pushing. His second point was that given that he has actually been in the U.S. House for quite a while, he is basically able to work the system better than the other people would be expected to. So he has the Washington, D.C. infrastructure, the staff, constituent services. He's worked through the appropriations process. He knows all the important lobbyists and the various committee members, and so he would be able to basically hit the ground running a little bit faster than the other two candidates. I think those are those are fine for what they are. Just the fact that he has a voting record isn't all that compelling to me, but he does have a good point in that he probably would be able to transition into this role quicker than the other two, who have to actually set up their office staffs and make those relationships that he has a head start in forming, I think he's been in the House since 2012, so he's had about 14 years in the U.S. House. His last point was that he beats Democrats. And so it's basically, the argument is that you have to worry less about him winning a general election than you would with the other two. I'm not all that worried about any of these three candidates winning in the general election. He also did gloss over the fact that he has lost to a Democrat before. His first foray into politics was actually losing a race to a Democrat named Ben Chandler. He came back 2 years later and narrowly defeated that candidate, that Democrat, Ben Chandler. And then he's continued to win that seat, which is a pretty purple seat. I'll give him credit. It isn't just routine, just show up and you're going to win, to win that Lexington area seat. It is, I think it's Republican plus 6 or 8. I think it got up to Republican 8 in the last redistricting. So he has done a reasonably good job of appealing to moderates in the Lexington area. And so his argument is, if you can win that Lexington district, then the Republican is going to win the red districts very easily, and they will be able to overwhelm the Louisville area, which tends to vote towards the Democratic Party in federal elections. So that is his main closing argument. If we can actually I like to have the candidate's voice actually making those arguments, but I think I made my attempt to characterize what he said as straight down the middle as I can. So that's basically his closing pitch, it seems. And so those 3 points that he wants to make of varying quality, I think, is he has a track record of voting for various bills that Trump has had, whereas the other two only talk about it because they haven't been in a position to vote for various policies. That he will have a head start because he has connections in D.C. One of my biggest skepticisms and why I'm not so convinced that I want him as our U.S. Senator is all those connections. I'm not sure that I want someone with all the connections to the big money lobbyists and the banking industry, which he's been a prominent member of, the Banking and Financial Services Committee. All of those, the people that are basically feeding the $10 million into his campaign so far. I would rather that we have a stronger voice for everyday Kentuckians rather than those big-moneyed lobbyists. And then finally, his final point was that he has a stronger track record of beating Democrats. The counterpoint would be, yes, Nate Morris has not run for a race before. The counterpoint for Daniel Cameron would be he's actually the only candidate who has run a statewide race before. And so not only has he won the primaries for both attorney general and governor, he also ran in the general election against a Democrat and for attorney general, and was the first Republican elected to that position in 70 years. And then he ran against the strongest Democrat candidate for any office, and that's Andy Beshear for governor, which he did not win, although he did outperform the initial polling in that race. When we come back, we hope to have on Bill Wesley as we talk about his race.
Back to Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
All right. Welcome back to Kentucky's Voice. I'm your special host, Dr. Lance Pearson with the Kentucky Liberty Caucus and the Louisville Tea Party. My producer's going to let me know if we can get Bill Wesley connected. I do want to do a little bit of background on his race. Hopefully we can join right after this and hear from Bill. Bill is a state rep for State District 91, which is Estill, Powell, and part of Madison counties, basically directly east and southeast of Lexington. He's held that seat, I want to say, for 3 terms, certainly for at least 2 terms. And he is running now for state senate against what turned into an incumbent race. I think everyone expected that Brandon Smith, who is the current state senator in that race, was going to retire. That was widely reported. But I don't know if it was the last moment, but late in the race, late in the filing, he decided that he was going to rerun for this. And so Bill is committed to running for this race as well. So a little bit of background. Why is this what I consider to be probably the most important state senate primary in the state? Well, first, I think Bill is a great guy, and hopefully we'll have him on so you can hear from him a little bit later. But the second is Brandon Smith, especially recently, has become quite scandal-plagued. And so this is a chance for us to basically take one of the people that is considered one of the most socially conservative House members and upstanding individuals. He's actually a former preacher. He may actually continue to do some ministry in the Eastern Kentucky area, and replace it with somebody who has had some recent scandals. So let me recount a couple of those scandals. Brandon Smith owns a company that he started, I think, about a decade ago, known as Mohawk Energy. It started off as something that was going to do like coal mine remediation, like converting old coal mines into productive uses. However, sometime around, right after COVID, sometime around 2022, he decided to switch that business over to rehabbing equipment for cryptocurrencies, basically covering for doing Bitcoin and repairing the processors and the computer components that do Bitcoin mining. All right. And so the good thing was this was supposedly going to increase tax revenue for Letcher County, which is one of the poorer counties in the state. So he got into this venture. At this point, it's not clear that has panned out whatsoever. He is in the midst of 2 pending lawsuits. And so, obviously we'll wait for those to be resolved. But one of the business partners that he has, he bought a warehouse off of a guy named Ricky Dale Cole. Ricky Dale Cole owned a large warehouse in Letcher County that he estimates was worth somewhere around $7 or $8 million. He sold it to Brandon Smith for about $2.5 million, plus 20% of the company that Brandon Smith was pitching as being extremely valuable, and therefore that kind of makes up for the $4 or $5 million discount that he was getting from Brandon Smith. He's now sued him and basically alleging that Smith misrepresented how much his company was actually worth, that 20% that he was supposed to get as compensation for part of the purchase price of the warehouse is worth very little. And so it's basically a lawsuit claiming that there was fraud in the business and misrepresentation of the value of businesses. All right. In 2023, another business partner in this little venture also sued Brandon Smith, and that is HBT Power. This is a Chinese company that was supposed to basically be training Eastern Kentuckians to repair these Bitcoin mining machines, these computer systems that are supposed to be mining Bitcoin processors. They basically said that Brandon Smith had misrepresented all kinds of things, like allegedly not actually owning the warehouse at the time that the contract was signed. He later there were eviction attempts that were made, and basically that this Chinese company that he was partnering with said that they weren't reimbursed for some renovations that they had to do for the facility. Okay, that's on top of about a decade ago, Brandon Smith was arrested for a DUI when he was driving to session, and he was actually acquitted of the drunk part. That the jury found that he wasn't significant, he wasn't enough over the legal limit in order to be prosecuted for that. It was just they basically reduced it to that he was speeding. The thing that became scandalous about that was his lawyer tried to use a little-known clause of the Kentucky Constitution that prevents representatives from being arrested as they are participating in, as they are trying to participate in a legislative session. So he was basically trying to get out of a DUI charge by claiming that he's a state rep and therefore he can't be prosecuted for crimes when he's traveling to and fro from the state legislature. All right. The final thing that recently came out is he got into a little squabble that he decided to take to the floor of the state Senate. He basically claimed that the Family Foundation had endorsed his candidacy against Bill Wesley in this race, and also that the NRA had endorsed him in this race. Neither of which seem to be true. So, producer, can we pull up the image of this billboard in question and then transition that over to a close-up of what we're talking about? Okay. So for our listeners on the radio, he basically plastered a gigantic billboard up. And on the right-hand side, it says that he's endorsed by the NRA and the Family Foundation and that he's a Trump Republican and let's go Brandon Smith. So kind of taking off on that. So if we could hit the next image, which is a zoom in on those endorsements, you can see there on the right-hand side. I believe he included this in mailers as well, but certainly that billboard we've got a giant picture of it. Now, the Family Foundation is a 501c3, and therefore they are not legally allowed to endorse anyone in these races. And we'll talk about whether or not they would have endorsed whether or not I think they would have endorsed Brandon Smith in this race anyway. But their statement that came out was, it recently came to our attention, this is the Family Foundation filing a legal document that they sent to Senator Brandon Smith, that he has been falsely representing that the Family Foundation has endorsed his campaign in the upcoming May 19th Republican primary election. Several of his campaign materials, including billboards, printed materials, his website, falsely claim that the Family Foundation endorsed his campaign. We have not endorsed Brandon Smith's campaign, and he is using our logo without permission. The Family Foundation is a 501c3 nonprofit and does not and has not endorsed any candidate for political office as an organization. All right, it continues on, but it's basically a cease desist letter that says, stop claiming that you are endorsed by us and using our logo without our permission and misrepresenting the facts. So Brandon Smith decided to, on the last day of session, maybe the second to last day, but one of the last days of session, have a floor speech where he went for 3 to 5 minutes, just more or less lambasting the Family Foundation, which is a socially conservative organization that advocates for legislation in the state legislature. And his basic point was that a little over a decade ago, he sponsored a bill that was related to abortion and related to restrictions on abortion, and the Family Foundation was very pleased with him on that. They have since started publishing scorecards for the last 5 or so years since 2021. And, he claimed that in one of those scorecards, he got a very high rating. The reality of the situation is, out of the 31 or 32, depending on what years we're talking about, Republican senators, he has not finished higher than 15th on any of those scorecards in the state Senate. His opponent in the race, however, Bill Wesley, who was in the House, and so it's not a direct comparison, they don't always hear exactly the same bills, has not scored less than a 90% on any of those scorecards. So I'm very skeptical that they would have endorsed Brandon Smith, even if they did endorsement. So after the break, we'll have more guests.
Back to Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
All right. Welcome back to Kentucky's Voice. You're listening to us on 970 AM in the Louisville area. I'm your special host, Dr. Lance Pearson, with the Louisville Tea Party and the Kentucky Liberty Caucus. Oh. All right. We're trying to sort out some issues online, trying to get some of our guests on. And I don't think it works that I can call the person and it streams in. So we're still trying to sort some of that out. So in the last segment, I was just talking about the race between Bill Wesley and Brandon Smith, which I consider to be the most important Kentucky State Senate race. Jay Williams, which his first name is spelt Gex, but everyone calls him Jay Williams. If we can get him to join on, I would love to talk to him in person. But let me talk a little bit about this race while we're trying to sort that out. Currently, Jay is a state senator for District 20. And so these are the counties that are included in that race: Carroll, Franklin, Gallatin, Owen, Boone, and Kenton in northern Kentucky. But Boone and Kenton, it's only part of both of those counties. The biggest population block, I believe, in that county is actually Franklin, which is Frankfort. And as you can imagine, Frankfort is relatively heavily Democrat. So, for example, in some of the presidential elections, the only three counties that were majority voting for Kamala Harris over Trump or various other people were Jefferson County, Fayette County, which is Louisville and Lexington, and then Franklin County with Frankfort. So it is not a slam dunk district in terms of voter registration or voter demographics. Jay actually got his start in state politics all the way back in the 1990s. There's no one in the state legislature that's got their start in the state legislature earlier than Jay. So he's the last holdout. However, he did spend over a decade out of office. So he was basically pursuing other business interests. And so he has a lot of institutional knowledge. He actually was around for Operation Bop Trot, which at some point I would love to talk to him about. But he was there in the 90s where the Department of Justice, FBI, I believe, basically came in and raided the Kentucky State Legislature over them accepting bribes and payments from the horse racing industry. So at some point, I'd love to talk to him about that. Let me just double check. Okay, we don't have him on quite yet. Okay, so Jay Williams is basically a quite conservative member of the Kentucky State Senate. He actually, given his long institutional knowledge, knows some of the tricks of the trade behind the scenes and how to call for votes to stop, or he's able to occasionally force for the tabling of some votes that the House majority or the Senate majority doesn't like. And so he can table those. They can work on the legislation more and then bring it back. There was a very dramatic case of that actually coming into play, I want to say 2 or 3 sessions ago, when they were talking about the bill that would ban genital mutilation and chemical castration of children, which was banned in this state, I believe 2 sessions ago, maybe 3 sessions ago. There were a lot of dramatics about that. All right. And so Jay has a lot of that institutional knowledge. I would say actually in this iteration of his Senate career, his biggest specialty was dealing with internet technology, so IT services. And so one of the more prominent bills that he filed this session was a bill that was related to shifting the authority away from the governor and towards other management of the Kentucky Wired program. So the Kentucky Wired program is a system. I want to say this is we're almost 2 decades into this. Certainly we're well over a decade. I want to say it's been at least 15 to 20 years that we have been trying to get broadband or high-speed internet access to rural Kentucky. And Kentucky Wired was a program in which they first got high-speed internet and broadband service to government facilities like schools or, the Capitol buildings. And then that was supposed to basically branch out and that allow service for all the other people in the community. So in trying to navigate that, there's basically been all kinds of accusations of fraud, cost overruns, the companies complaining about the vendors and the amount of oversight that the government was giving to it, improper oversight. And so what this bill did, and I believe the number on that is SB 64, it reformed and restructured aspects of the Kentucky Communications Network Authority. So it was basically changing the way that it was administered, the board composition, and the emergency provisions. I think in the interim, he's been a part of the Information Technology and Small Business subcommittees. Another act that he sponsored this time was SB 351. This was a bill that was related to education professionals and getting their certifications. And so what this bill did is it was changing some of the requirements or the standards that were needed for teacher certification to kind of lessen those and allow some of the, streamline it. Actually, I think one of the things was they
Okay, this is Jay. Can you hear me now?
Yes. All right. I think we've got Jay on now, finally.
Here's the tech guy. I was connected the wrong way. I was by phone and voice. You couldn't hear me on either one. Okay.
No worries. Hey, better late than never, Jay. Yeah, better late than never, Jay. So you probably heard some of that intro. I talked about a couple bills that you'd filed this session. But do you want to talk a little bit about your election that's coming up and why your district is not just a slam dunk Republican hold, why it's important for people in your district, which includes Franklin County, Owen County, parts of Boone and Kenton, Gallatin County, why it's important for them to get out and vote and to support your – go ahead.
Well, actually, I do not have a primary. I got a general. But in the beginning, Were you talking about Bob Trott?
Very briefly. I don't know that we got time to get into that, but I want to bring you back on later, and we'll talk about that fascinating story. And I actually haven't heard you give your full spiel on it either. So when we're up for a general election discussion, we'll bring you back in for that.
Right.
Just tell me about your election.
So my election right now is all about supporting Thomas Massie. So I don't have a primary. I got a general. The general is tough for me because I have 6 counties. My largest county is Franklin County. Yeah. It's 46% of the registration, but because they have high turnout, they're 52% of the vote. Yeah. And there's only 35% of the registered voters are Republicans. Yeah. So I have got to get a significant number of other voters, Democrats or independents, to vote for me.
Right. And so he's a great senator. We want to support him. And so if people want to give to your campaign, can you tell us how we find out more about your campaign and where to give to it?
WinRed, J. Williams. You can go to jforsenate.com. Or to go to WinRed and look for J, and that's GEX Williams, and you'll find a donation page there. There's a link on my J for Senate page.
Okay.
That's GEX for Senate.
Yep.
Okay.
GEX spell that out, FOR Senate.
FOR Senate.com. I think actually you can do it either way. But you can't do JAY. That's not the way JAY is spelled in Kentucky.
Yeah, no worries. We got you. Named after a small town in northern Kentucky, I think.
It's named, yes. Yeah, that was bought by Nucor, so the town doesn't exist. But if you go to Stax and you look at the map from the turn of the century, you'll see the road map with J at the right there where the Markland Dam was. That was Jay's Landing since before the Civil War, since the 1800s.
Okay.
On that.
All right, so we'll bring you back on closer to the general election where you're facing a Democrat. You don't have Republican opposition this time. So you mentioned Thomas Massie. You were actually, I think, just at an event with him. Did Thomas Massie make it to the Owen County Lincoln Day dinner?
Yes.
Okay.
We had Thomas and ran there, and now Ed Galrine. His opponent won't show himself anywhere where he thinks he's going to have to make an independent speech or much less answer any questions.
Yeah.
And so he had a proxy spoke for him that actually said he thought he was in Oldham County, not Owen. But
that's right.
So, but when Thomas Massie, Thomas, it is a tight race in some areas, but Owen County, I would say those were the activists, and they have a lot of Republican primaries going on there.
Yeah.
And I would say he got like about 75 to 80% of the room stood up and applauded Thomas. And and of course, Gowrine's table didn't stand up, which was a few people. So I'd say Thomas, they really liked how Thomas approached it.
Yeah.
And I introduced him. And the key is we want a strong president, which we got a strong president, President Trump, and you want a strong Congress. That is why we set up checks and balances. That's the most brilliant thing our government did. And Thomas is the conscience of Congress. And I think that's why people responded to him there.
And
he's that. So that to me, it's clear. Strong president, strong Congress, but Congress is broken.
Yeah.
And Thomas is the one. Trump fixed the presidency. Now we need Congress to get fixed. And Massie is the one with the debt clock over his heart. Their number one job is doing the budget, and they're not doing it.
That's
and we can't kick out the one guy that is telling them balance the budget.
That's right. That's right. I couldn't agree more. And I want to note it's certainly possible. I think the surrogate said that Gowrine was attending a stepmother's funeral in Texas or something. So obviously, if that's true, condolences to the family, and that's understandable. It doesn't explain why he has canceled 6 or 7 debates that Thomas has shown up to or wanted to show up to. And basically, Gowrine just seems to not want to interact with the voters in any forum where he can face some serious questions or talk about policy. Is that your read on the race? Is he's just basically running something like a Biden basement campaign?
Yeah, it's a Biden campaign. Hide him in the basement, keep him away from the voters or answer any questions.
Yeah.
So when I went to the Senate, I was number 13 out of 38. I was in the House for one term back in 1990, first Republican ever elected from Boone County, and I was number 25 out of 100. And it was right to life was the number one reason a Democrat would vote for Republican. And Gowrine won't say where he stands.
Yeah.
He got picked out by Kentucky Right to Life. He would not respond to the questionnaires. Northern Kentucky Right to Life. You have got to be for Thomas, who has been 100% pro-life his entire career. And Thomas
We're going to pick you up right after the break, Jay. Join us on Kentucky's Voice.
Back to Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
Welcome back to Kentucky's Voice. I'm your special host, Dr. Lance Pearson with the Kentucky Liberty Caucus as well as the Louisville Tea Party. We are joined today by State Senator Jay Williams, and in just a moment we will also be joined by Kim Holloway. We'll transition to her, but I wanted to let Jay finish his thought. Jay, you were talking about how the refusal of Ed Gowron in his race against Thomas Massie to answer any substantial questions. One illustration of that, if our producer could put up a graphic, is he apparently has refused to answer the candidate questionnaire from the Commonwealth Policy Center. We talked earlier about the Family Foundation of Kentucky and the spat that they had with Brandon Smith. Commonwealth Policy Center does endorse candidates, but they mostly do candidate questionnaires where they try to get your positions on various topics. And so you can see on the left-hand side of the graphic, we have Thomas Massie, basically a yes on every priority piece of federal legislation that they have, that they rate on. This is a socially conservative organization. Everything from restricting illegal immigration down to restrictions on religious liberties, etc. And Ed Gowron refused apparently to fill out his questionnaire, so he's got no response. The voters have no idea what his policy positions are on any of the substantial policy questions. So, Jay, you were talking briefly about how this applies to the pro-life issue. I want you to continue that thought, and just so our listeners can hear that.
Yes, the number one reason we went from a majority Democrat state back in the 90s and then through the 2000s, the number one reason a Democrat would vote for a Republican was pro-life. Yeah. That's why a lot of Democrats switched to Republican, and it was unprecedented for any candidate in a Republican primary not to fill out the Kentucky Right to Life questionnaires. Much less all these other. A challenger always fills out all the questionnaires, so people know where he stands.
Right.
And this is unprecedented that Ed will not fill out where he stands on any issue. And in particular, to me, the disqualifying issue is right to life.
Right.
He will not fill it out. He says he's right to life, but we know that Aaron Reed was not given the nod because Aaron Reed is right to life without exceptions, as is Thomas Massie.
That's right.
Ed is not, and he won't fill out anything that will put him on the record. And when somebody doesn't do that, you better believe that he is planning to going up there and voting against his district, particularly on the disqualifying issue of pro-life. Yeah. He is not. And if you are pro-life, you cannot let a Republican candidate in the 4th Congressional District get away without making a clear, consistent position to the Kentucky Right to Life and Northern Kentucky Right to Life on protecting the lives of unborn children.
All right. Jay, thank you for joining us. Again, we will have Jay on, hopefully multiple times, but certainly before the general election where he's facing a fairly difficult reelection in a district Democrat that is pretty well balanced between Democrats and Republicans. So thank you, Jay.
Thank you, and sorry for the technical stuff. Looking forward to being back.
No worries. We have great experience with technical issues.
Okay.
All right. Our next guest, and hopefully we've got her on, is Kim Holloway. Kim Holloway is from far western Kentucky, the Purchase, as they call it, the Jackson Purchase. But she represents Graves County and McCracken County, a heavily agricultural area of the state. They actually get more hours of sunlight than the rest of the state, and therefore they're the most productive agricultural portion of the state, and she's right there with her with that. So, producer, can we bring on Kim Holloway? All right.
Good morning, Lance. I'm here.
All right. So you've got a glamour shot, kind of glossy look on the screen. So what?
Well, I've got it blurred behind me because this is actually my workroom and it's a disaster. So.
Yep. No worries. All right. Well, tell me about your district. I think I mentioned it's all of Graves County in the southern part of McCracken County, just south of Paducah, maybe even a little sliver of Paducah proper. But tell us about your district and what the voters of your district care about.
You did. Well, like you said, I represent all of Graves County, and I have 8 precincts in McCracken County. I believe that about a third of my voters are in McCracken, so it's a significant, significant proportion there. Like you said, we are a heavily agricultural industry, especially right here in Graves County. Maybe not quite as much in McCracken. They're a little bit more, a little bit less rural, even though we're all over here in far western Kentucky. Right. Graves County depends on agriculture, and there's a little bit more industry going on in McCracken County, especially around my district. So I wouldn't say that the two areas are really comparable at all. The voters have different interests and different needs just based on those two realities.
Yeah. All right. Now, you've got a very interesting story just in terms of running. You tried to run, I want to say 4 years ago, and there was a snafu with the paperwork that got filed. So just tell us a little bit about that. It was this issue with the stepdaughter, I think. So go ahead and tell us about that.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I have been running for this office for nearly 5 years. I just decided in September of 21, just randomly and impulsively, that I was going to do what I was waiting for someone else to do. No political experience whatsoever, had never considered this path in any shape, form, or fashion, and just filed the papers while no one else was home. And that's where this journey started. Chose to have my oldest son and my stepdaughter sign my paperwork because I just wanted to represent both sides of our blended family in this journey. And it was brought to my attention in March of 22 that I had a paperwork error. The Republican Party called me, said that I needed to withdraw. Told them absolutely not. And I was then sued by a constituent. Turned out that constituent was put up to this by the former chair and still the current vice chair of the GOP there in McCracken County. They were successful at suing me off the ballot. I skipped the part where my stepdaughter turned out to be a registered Democrat. She didn't know, I didn't know. As a first time candidate, a little bit naive, I didn't know to check her paperwork. So that's what happened. Ended up disqualified, was kicked off the ballot.
Well, you ran a very spirited write-in campaign, right? So tell me about that, how difficult it is to run as a write-in and how well you did, actually.
I actually I didn't do any door knocking because I knew that I wasn't going to be successful in that write-in, but I wasn't about to give up. And ended up pulling about 17% in overall between both of the counties, and 21% in my own county. It just rubbed people wrong. They didn't like allowing the court to decide who the candidate was going to be.
That's right.
But at the end of the day, I'm incredibly thankful for that experience. I probably would have lost in 2022, no doubt. And I really feel like God was watching out for me. He was waiting for the right time for me to be up here and to continue the race. And I never stopped after that write-in campaign. And ultimately in 2024, we were successful and was sworn in on January the 1st of 2025 and have just completed my second session.
Okay. And you're doing I do follow you on Facebook. So search out Kim Holloway or Kim Holloway for representative for District 2 on Facebook.
Yeah, I think something like that. Something like that.
But look her up because she does a great job of keeping her constituents informed about what's going on in Frankfort. Like one of the best of anybody in the Senate or the House. So like I would say the people of Graves and McCracken County, if they follow you on Facebook, actually know more about what's going on in the state legislature than almost anyone else. So
that's I try my very hardest to pick out information that I think is relevant and interesting. Of course, there's so much more I could cover, but I don't have a staff. It's just me doing this, and I try to educate whenever there's an opportunity. We are so far removed from Frankfort and have very little idea about what's going on down here. Many people don't know who the representative is or what they do. And I just take the opportunity to inform people. I think that people deserve that and they welcome that. And it's been very well received.
Yeah. And just this is an illustration of how difficult it is to be a rep from the far western or the far eastern part of the state. You got to come all the way to Frankfort. And when you come from the western part, you lose an hour going that way. So
That's
it's like,
right.
not only is it a 3-hour drive, it's really 4 hours because you lose that extra hour. So.
Oh, no, it's actually 4 hours and kind of like a 5-hour drive.
Okay.
It takes me 4 hours to get to Frankfort. Exactly.
Yeah. So crazy. All right. So obviously agriculture is a big priority. You are the wife of, and therefore you are a soybean farmer, one of the,
That's
a very
right.
large soybean farmer.
Yes. We farm row crop. We do soybeans, corn, canola, wheat, and tobacco.
Yeah. Okay. So you're what I consider one of only 2 full-time agriculture, farmers basically in our state legislature. So people do turn for you.
That's what I understand. Yes.
Yeah, they turn to you, along with Ryan Bivens, who you're sweet mate
Yes.
and good friends with.
Yeah. He's a good friend of mine.
Yep. And so, you have a blended family with 7 kids. So obviously family is very important to you, and those types of issues, legislation are one of your priorities as well. Talk about that.
Absolutely.
Yep.
We're actually a blended family with 9 children. 7 of them are mine.
Oh, wow.
My husband has 2 from his previous marriage, and we have the 3 youngest ones are ours together. And we also have 8 grandchildren, and all but one of our children live right here in Graves County.
Okay. Well, that's great. Keeping the family together.
Certainly.
So we won't get into bills. So we won't get so much into bills this time. I know you filed one on light pollution. But I just want you to finish off. We got about a little over a minute. Just give your pitch to your voters. Why is it that and by the way, she is running against the person that she defeated last time, who was a longtime, House chairman of agriculture, et cetera. She ran a fantastic campaign. It was somewhat unexpected that she won that time. I will be somewhat surprised if she doesn't win this time. That's how good a job she has done in her first session up there. So go ahead and give the pitch to your voters. Why should they vote for you?
Well, I'm a person in my ward, and I started this race out with the best of intentions. I wanted to make sure that we were upholding constitutional principles in our state legislature. I believe I've done a very good job of voting consistently with small government, fiscal responsibility, and individual liberty. And, it's my intention to return to the legislature and keep working to defend those things. Honesty is a very significantly important quality to me. And I think that my voters have really appreciated the transparency that I've provided over the last couple of years. And I'll just ask everyone to consider voting Holloway on the 19th.
All right. Thanks for joining us. Find Kim Holloway on Facebook.